Good morning, everyone. It's time for tea. I'm kidding. I hope to be brief so that we can go for tea and no questions after this. As the title says, salvaging, in quotation marks, inverted commas, I mean to say, rock art in the name of conserving and managing the arts. And I'll be using, this is the case study of rock art from Ebusingatha Valley. So I'm wearing a hat of being a museum practitioner. I work at KwaZulu-Natal Museum. And one of the things that we do at KwaZulu-Natal Museum is have collections. So as I start, go to the next slide. Oh, okay. Okay, so before I start, I'd like to start by asking the question, salvage versus removal of rock art. Salvage is to rescue, and I think it's the term that has been borrowed by archaeologists to save or to rescue rock art from when they are building a dam or building a road or whatever. And there's removal of rock art in Southern Africa is a practice that started in the late 1800s, but now I believe it's no longer practiced. I stand to be corrected. But now as museum people, we are faced with this issue where rock art was removed a long time ago and brought to our institutions, and we have this in our collections rooms. And the things that we do at the museum is take the people through the collections room. And when we take people through the collections rooms, one of the things that we ask or we tell them as archaeologists, heritage practitioners, museum practitioners is that do not pick things when you go to the site. Do not, all these nitty-gritties. What you're supposed to do. Do not pour water on rock art. Do not do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But here we are presented with rock art slabs in our storerooms. And the frequently asked questions are, but why are these rocks in the collections rooms if we are not supposed to remove the collections when we go to the sites at the Drakensberg or any other rock art sites? And also, why so much rock art here in the storerooms and not on displays? Then other things that, why are you prohibiting it from us, the public, to see it? And those are fair questions, but also unfair because we are taking up a legacy that we found as current museum employees. And now we have to deal with these questions as museum employees and try to say they were salvaged. But were they really salvaged? Understand? That's the question that I'm posing. Were they really salvaged? And I will be talking about Ebusingatha, the rock art from Ebusingatha, a shelter called uMhwabane, as a case study. Some of you might know it, some of you might not know it. There's an amount of work that has been done, not so much, but amount of work done by Jeremy Holman and Museum Simanga in 2008. Also, Justine Winches, my colleague, she also did her PhD at Ebusingatha Valley. And with the rock art that we have in the displays, in the storerooms, 2/3 of the rock art comes from Ebusingatha Valley. And the shelter that I'm talking about specifically, uMhwabane shelter. And one piece, the elephant man is on display. That's what the public gets to see on displays, and the rest is in the storerooms. So now I'll go to the background of Ebusingatha. Ebusingatha, uMhwabane shelter. uMhwabane shelter is situated in Ebusingatha Valley. It's a fairly accessible site. It's actually easy accessible site. And also uMhwabane shelter's geology it's in the Bergville area, and the Bergville area's geology is made up of the Beaufort series and the Duiker formation. And those who do geology would know that the Beaufort series, the shales, are really fragmented. They're not that strong, depending which part of the area you're in. So in 2021, after the restrictions of lockdown have been, slightly loosened up, we're going to Ebusingatha. So, and that's the first thing we did when we got back to the museum. And we took a trip, and this is the picture here. This is the picture of us there going to see the site. So, as I said, it's in the Amazizi traditional authorities in the Ebusingatha Valley, and this is the house. Where's the pointer? The houses there, they belong, I think, to the Amazizi the Amazizi community. And the ladies who also took us there are from the Amazizi community, and whom also I'd like to dedicate this talk to uMamba Winile, who recently passed away. I think she passed away last week. She was one of the pioneering rock art monitoring ladies, and I'm becoming emotional because when she took us here, she would tell us stories about the site and about the shelter itself. And that the reason why they gave it uMhwabane is named after a snake, uMhwabane. Some of you might know it as uMamlambo, but they call it uMhwabane. This is why the shelter is called uMhwabane. And she would say that they respect the shelter so much that whoever goes to the shelter, people will be like, but uMhwabane will get you. See, that's the ideology or the respect that they have for the shelter. So the history here is that, what's his name? Leo Frobenius, in the 1929, was really interested in understanding the rock art of what he called the Singati Valley. And during those years of 1920, late 1920s, early 1930s, he hired painters, the three ladies, not the three ladies, a couple of painters whom are women. Elizabeth Mansfield, I think her name was Elizabeth Goddard, Agnes Susan Scholes, Maria Weiserberg, Joachim Lutz, please excuse my pronunciation, to do some paintings at the shelter, some of the Ebusingatha area and also the shelter. He was not the Dr. Leo Frobenius at that time, but he was leading the expedition, and he hired these ladies. And so these are the paintings or the drawings that the ladies drew. Here's uMhwabane. This is uMhwabane there. When you go to the site, you can see the paintings have faded, slightly faded, but you can actually see the snake. Last time when we went there in 2021, we couldn't see where the head was. We thought like probably the head is this side, but now we realize that it's this side. And also other drawings, they did a couple of drawings of the site. And then, but he was not keen so much into, I would say, protecting the site. It was just an expedition. The person I'd like to give props is Dr. Clarence van Rietlo, who was a professor at University of Witwatersrand, Wits University. And he was an engineer and also an archaeologist, I would say, by right. And in the 1940s, he went and took this photo of uMhwabane shelter. And I like to make a note of this. Sorry, this rock. What is this? The wall, the stone walls. And when we went there, the walls are gone. And this is the photo that was taken by Van Rietlo in the 1940s. And just to see, because already there were rumors that the shelter is deteriorating because of its fragmentary nature. I think yesterday they mentioned it's a rock mass something, the fragmentary nature of it. But also because of the uMhwabane, the snake, and also the price that the rock art that you saw earlier on that I showed you, which I'll talk about, the elephant man, it became a site of interest during that time when the royal family, came. Okay, this is the site now. When you go there, it's very fragmented. This is the site. When the royal family came, and when the royal family came, the guy, I think he was the Prime Minister, Jan Smuts, Clarence spoke to him, Van Rietlo spoke to him about the site, that the possible site that they can visit is Ebusingatha, the uMhwabane shelter. But then the provincial secretary was already telling them that the site is deteriorating. The rocks are coming off. I don't think it's a good idea to take the royal family there. And I don't know how, but they managed to get a permit to remove, the royal family managed to get a permit to remove some of the slabs, and which also exacerbated the deterioration of the Ebusingatha or the uMhwabane shelter rock paintings. And one of the pieces that they took was the elephant man, which is now in the museum. And also, the story is that the reason why they asked for permit is because they couldn't cross the river, and they didn't want the queens to get her feet dirty, so they had to remove the slabs. This is why they applied, but we don't know how true those stories are. That is why they applied for permit to remove the rocks. And Clarence then decided in 1946 to have the rocks, some of the slabs removed, rock removals, in a sense of preserving the rock art, since the site or the cave, the shelter is depleting or deteriorating. And the idea was to put the slabs in a royal, what they call the Royal National Hotel. And when we went there in 2021, this is the Royal Natal Hotel, supposedly to be managed by Ezemvelo. But yeah, this is the state. And this is where some of the rock panels were. And because of the state it was in 1960s, they decided, a rock piece got missing while it was here in the National Hotel. And they decided in the 1960s to take the staff to KZN Museum. This is the elephant man that I was talking about, to take the staff to KwaZulu-Natal Museum, which is now currently KwaZulu-Natal Museum. Then it was the Natal Museum, as a way of preserving and removing it from being stolen by the public. So, and this was done in the 1960s. This is how it was dumped. And in 2005, 2008, Jeanette Dickens and staff from KwaZulu-Natal Museum, formerly Natal Museum, there was some graffiti at Ebusingatha, at uMhwabane shelter, and they went there to remove some graffiti. And one of the people that they took was the museum staff was Jeremy Holman, thank you. Jeremy Holman and Museum Simanga to go help with removing the graffiti. But also, this is the time when Jeremy Holman was just employed at the museum. And the state that he found the rock pieces at Natal Museum, Natal Museum was very, what is this? Was very not in good conditions. So I'd like to mention a quote with the graffiti from Justine Winch's thesis. She says that photographs from both 1929 and from mid-1940s display scribbling and writing only on surfaces where no paintings were ever recorded, such as areas above two of the panels. It would seem as though visitors wrote their names alongside the paintings in a kind of deference and not in order to deface them. And I'm quoting this because talking to Mamba Winile, who's no more, the late Mamba Winile, and when she mentions the respect that they have for the site, for me, I would say I sort of agree with the statement that the people there, they had respect, so much respect at the site. They probably had the graffiti. I'm not saying the graffiti is good. I'm just saying maybe that's the possible reason. It's just like a source of pride that I was there at uMhwabane, you know, the most dangerous shelter, or a shelter where the most dangerous snake resides. That's my thinking. Okay, moving back to the museum, the storage in the that the staff stored at the museum. Jeremy Holman in 2005, 2008, then took upon himself to do what we call conservation, preventative measures of the stuff because they were covered in dust and they were just dumped there. And the things that he did was doing these boxes, the archival material to cover the material, the rock art pieces, and also to clean the rock pieces because they were heavily covered in dust and you couldn't see the paintings at all. To anyone, a stranger, when you walk to the storeroom, you'd assume this is dirt. It's just rocks piled up. But actually, there's information, there's rock art. One of those pieces was the Elephant Man. And these are the archival boxes, and he made the trolleys for them. And this was in 2008. And the idea when he wrote this thing, he wrote a paper, and he said two centers meaning a rock art site that is constantly being vandalized and a collection of painted rocks in the Natal Museum Archaeology Storeroom, which is KwaZulu-Natal Museum. And the best example of the removed rocks, rock art, in terms of interesting subject matter and preservation, should be displayed as Van Rietlo intended. So remember, Van Rietlo removed the rocks in the sense of preserving the art, you know, from it falling further and being destroyed. And Coleman and Simanga suggest that it should be displayed for, you know, the people at the site, Amazizi being left at for Amazizi communities, because that's where the rock belongs. But this was in 2008 and nothing ever happened. And these are the Mamba Winile, whom she's no more, and her daughter. And which are they no more. So now you ask yourself, what have we done as KZN museum staff with this problem that we're faced with? There are future plans. Some of you might know, some of you might not know. Rumor has it that the museum is moving from where it is now, KwaZulu-Natal Museum. They're building a new building up the road, and this is the building. And one of the plans is to make the rock art pieces that are in the uMhwabane rock art pieces that are in the storeroom, to make a cave and make it a new display in the new museum. But, you know, these are suggestions. We never know if it will materialize. And another future ongoing project is that Justine is still working on the project. They're doing photogrammetry with some of her students, Angus, they're doing the 3D modeling. And also another suggestion would be interpretation centers. But interpretation center where when it's guarded by Ebusingatha and you saw the Royal Natal, what's supposed to be Royal Natal is not taken care of. So those are the challenges that we have as museum practitioners and the questions that we have to answer to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will open the floor for questions. Any questions or comments, speaker?
Thank you so much for the presentation. First question, are there pictures perhaps of the visitation of the royal family? Yes.
No. Oh, sorry. Apparently, they couldn't cross the river. That was the idea. Like, this is why they had the rocks removed because the queen didn't want to make her feet dirty.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the, yeah, we don't know. In inverted commas, I'm quoting.
I think for just issues, purposes with regarding to conservation versus preservation, I think we still have a long way to go. It also boils down to Ugo's presentation about site making. So you are removing something in order to protect it, but are you really protecting that thing? Because you're taking it away from its place of origin with intentions of preserving and protecting. So I think when it comes to conservation and preservation, I have my own reservations, and also to look at the aspects of post-colonial, pre-colonial. Is the meaning still the same? Because you remove that rock slab, is the meaning still the same? Probably there's something that you have left behind you don't know, all in the name of salvaging and preserving it.
Thank you for your question and your comment. There's no longer removing of rock art. If I stand to be corrected, the term salvaging, this was done during the, I would say, early 1800s, late 1800s of removing of rock art in terms of preservation, and also 1940s there. But people are now cautious of doing that. And the issue is now museums all over the world, probably all over the country, are faced with this challenge of these slabs now dumped to our storerooms, and the current staff are now be carrying the legacy that we don't know how it came through, and we have to answer questions, difficult questions, you understand, and come up with solutions of how do we deal then with such issues. So this is why with the new museum, we hope if they listen to us, you know how these things are. If they do listen to us, we could maybe reassemble a mini uMhwabane shelter. The other idea was to take those rock art pieces to the community at where the Amazizi traditional authority is, but then it's under Ebusingatha, and we're not sure if they will be able to manage. So those are the challenges. I hope I've. But Justine can answer because she's doing some puzzle work refitting, which is interesting.
So yes, in this case, we do have some very detailed photographs from the Banias expedition in 1929 that actually show exactly where these pieces, how they fitted together and how they were configured in the shelter. So it's an unusual case in that sense, because we do also have a lot of pieces where we have no idea where it comes from exactly. So it's a slightly different case. Your question about the photographs as well, I have tried to write to the British royal family in the UK. I never got an answer, but I should maybe try again to see if there are any photographs from them, at least at the hotel, because they would have seen these pieces on display at the hotel. And that would be quite interesting if there were photographs of that, just as part of the archive. and also the question of how they were displayed at the time. It's a very complicated, very interesting case, Ebusingatha. It's a kind of, to borrow a phrase from yesterday, in a way paradigmatic case around rock art removal, because it has all of the issues, you know, that one can raise in relation to these kinds of practices that, as Dima said, it's no longer commonly done today. It still does happen as mitigation in cases where there's no other option, flooding, dam flooding, that sort of thing. But this is also, it's also this question of, like, as museum curators, you know, we have all these materials and what do we do with them now? And you sort of try to kind of get a bit creative and think about how we can kind of re-enliven the materials now, despite all of this breakage. In relation to this site too, I have also heard people ask the question whether maybe the removals were not a bad thing in this case because of the ongoing collapse at the shelter. So the paintings were, the rock, also another thing yesterday was rock mass instability from one of the presentations. And that's very much a case here from before the paintings were even placed on the rock surfaces. So very much these broken panels all over, and the paintings were placed onto those panels as broken panels. So in a way, the brokenness is part of the, I would say, the sort of metaphysical world that was once, you know, in this place. So that's also quite interesting. The brokenness and the ongoing collapse. There was a collapse of the ceiling in the 1990s as well. So it looks completely different. And I mean, we don't know if the removals maybe had an impact that, you know, only happened 50 years later, the cracks or whatever, it collapsed again. And the remaining panel there is just painful to see, because it's like you look at it and the little flakes are falling off. It's very tangible, you know, the deterioration. So the question of whether maybe in this case it wasn't a bad thing to remove them, but that's also a difficult question to answer, right, in a simple way. Thanks.
Thanks, Dimakatso. That was terrific, very exciting, and more so for me because we've got kind of a parallel case, which it sounds like you're moving towards publishing various things on this, and you might want to look at a parallel in the Western Cape, which is the panels that were removed as part of the Clanwilliam Dam project. And Jeremy was also very much involved in that, so he would actually be the right person to draw the parallels. But the parallels are quite striking. So, for instance, one of the panels that was removed had never been graffitized. You know, it was the idea to remove it came because it was going to be flooded, and so it was removed. And whenever almost immediately afterwards, the space behind it was graffitized. Everybody made a beeline to this white kind of area. So it had never been damaged, and when it was not there, it was damaged. You know what I mean? It was really interesting and sounds a little bit parallel to some of the things you were showing us. And then the other parallel is that we desperately wanted for, and kind of relates to what the main point of your talk, we desperately wanted these panels not to go back to Cape Town and end up in the bowels of the museum where nobody might ever see them. We made the argument, Jeremy, myself, we made the argument that in fact they should stay in Clanwilliam and be of benefit to the people of Clanwilliam, right? And so they were stored in Clanwilliam, and the building in which they were stored eventually got burnt down and looked very much like your Royal Hotel, in fact. By a miracle, the panels were not damaged. The people who did the burning and the vandalism were more interested in the wooden frames that the panels had been stored in than they were in the panels themselves. And so when we went the morning after the burning, it was we didn't know what we'd find, but their panels were perfectly okay, and they've now been moved to somewhere where they're safer. But I think a lot of the a lot of the issues that they're very important issues that you've raised, and thank you for that. You know, I think there's a kind of parallelism there which might be explored. So thank you.
Can we open the floor for one final question, just for the sake of time?
Thank you very much, Dimakatso, for a very good presentation. I agree you asked me to comment. I'm here for you. A very good presentation. I think you are being polite. You are just saying, I work in an institution, I'm not put in trouble, where top-down approach is being used. We are being told by leaders we are moving to a new building. We are being told what to do with the collections. So we are saying collections are being politicized. So I think it's a problem in most of these institutions. You are a practitioner, but the politics is playing against the science. So that one I think is interesting. But what I want to talk about is, I'm trying also a parallel here with the Botswana National Museum. I think Resegadi will make comment later, and other colleagues. Some years back, we have this dam in the northeast Botswana, Mtimbani Dam. It was going to be flooded. A panel was removed, the rock-art panel. I think it should have been taken to Francistown, or a close area within the local area. But I still think in Sakaboroni, maybe my colleagues from the museum can comment here. Where is that panel? I know you are revamping the museum. I can also say I hear you are revamping the museum. Is that going to be part of the collection there, or is still going to sit somewhere at the corner of the museum in a dark room? So so it's quite interesting from this point of view. So there's all these panels that are removed across Southern Africa. Where are we taking them? What are the ethical considerations, the politics, the context? So very interesting questions.